Civilization or Barbarism, an Authentic Anthropology by Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop. Rome and Carthage. The rivalry between Rome and Carthage for supremacy in the Mediterranean and domination of the world markets in antiquity led to the physical destruction of the Carthaginian people, who perished in flames. In this case, also, the ethnic opposition was manifest. Apparently, the two peoples did not live on the same land, but Carthage tried several times to conquer Sicily, where it had succeeded in getting a small site for a port. Rome did not wish to colonize Carthage, the danger being too great, and at its doorstep. It pronounced a curse on the ancient site of Carthage and ritually sowed it with salt to sterilize it forever. Such rites of expiation and cursing, one might say, were commonplace after the destruction of an ethnic group in a Darwinian type of struggle. The brutal destruction of an entire ethnic group could not indemnify the conscience of the conqueror, which was, after all, the seat of a diffuse feeling of guilt. The destroyed people then became the scapegoat. They deserved their fate because they were impious, sinister, lustful, and addicted to Dionysic orgies, in short, incapable of promoting progress. Purification rites had to be formed before the founding of a new city on the ashes of the barbarian victims. These are the echoes that we find here and there in the legends and the various tales invoking the fate of the ethnic groups that were thus destroyed. The descendants of the race of Cadmus in Boeotia, Greece, worshippers of earthly divinities in the form of snakes, the Etruscans and the Umbrians in Italy, the Canaanites, etc. Future generations must forget these dead so that the conquering people can undergo a rebirth with an angelic conscience. Franks and Gallo-Romans. After the conquest of Gaul, the victorious Franks established a domination founded solely on race and having nothing to do with what is called personality of laws, i.e., the Burgundians, Visigoths, Romans, and Gauls, be judged accordingly to their respective customary codes when they committed common offenses. In Visigoth countries, intermarriage with conquered Romans was officially forbidden. Frankish legislation went so far as to oppose barbarians and Romans, stipulating stronger, generally doubled penalties whenever the victim of an aggression, or even simply a petty offense, belonged to the race of the Frankish conquerors. Because of the quasi identical ethnic origins, assimilation progressed even in the laws, and the Frankish Germanic racial domination over the Romans and the Romanized Gauls gradually became a domination based on class. It was this right of conquest of the Frankish nobility, ancestors of the French nobility at the time of the 1789 revolution, that the royalist adversaries of the liberals, such as Augustin Thierry, invoked to legitimize the monarchy. The nobles were descendants of the Frankish conquerors, and the commoners were descendants of the conquered Gauls and Romans. That these were different ethnic groups is historically true. What is false and irrational are the racist considerations that the elite classes ultimately derive from this situation, namely that so called commoners and later the industrial workers belong to the brachycephalic alpine race, who were submissive, born to be dominated, a degenerate race, physically, intellectually inferior, a race whose members are little or not at all prone to suicide because they have only a pusillanimous soul, incapable of the great moral sentiments that ground human courage. Whereas, from this perspective, the nobles who descended from the Franks and the Germans belonged to a superior race, born to command and dominate, called Europeus or Nordic European. They are big, dolichocephalic, blonde with blue eyes, the blonde beast of Count Joseph de Gobineau, the precursor of the Nazi theoreticus. The race whose members willingly commit suicide whenever life's rituals justify such an extreme act. This intra European racism, reducing social class to ethnicity, flourished in Europe throughout the 19th century following the French Revolution and went into temporary eclipse only after World War II with the defeat of Nazism. In 1789, the cry went out that what had taken place was the victory of the Gauls over the Franks. For social anthropology, all sociological phenomena, class relations, wealth, distribution of cities, political events, are explained by biological considerations, by the presence or absence, the degeneration of the characteristic traits of the superior race, the Homo europaeus. G. Vachter de Lapouge developed Gobineau's racist theory at the end of the 19th century. In an article published in 1897, he did not hesitate to formulate the law of distribution of wealth, which stipulated that in the mixed Europeus Alpinus countries, wealth grows in inverse ratio to the cephalic indicator, the law of urban indicators, which proclaimed that inhabitants of cities are much more dolichocephalic than those of the surrounding countrysides. And according to the law of stratification, the cephalic indicator decreases and the proportion of dolichocephalics increases from the inferior to the superior classes in each locality. According to A. Rosenberg, the French Revolution was only a revolt of the brachiocephalics of the Alpine race against the dolichocephalics of the Nordic race, and the Bolshevism was nothing but an insurrection of Mongoloids. An American immigration law, not yet repealed, I believe, aims at limiting the influx of the Alpine race by singularly curtailing the admission to America of Europeans from the regions south of the Loire River. Likewise, in antiquity, the plebeian class, after its victory over aristocracy, at first immediate imitated the aristocracy in all domains before acquiring enough autonomy of thought to find its own way. This was also true after the French Revolution, the modern bourgeoisie, as if it would make them forget the racism they had suffered under the Ancien regime, became guilty of racism in the strict sense toward the working class and people of humble origin. In May 1849, a professor at the Sorbonne wrote in a paragraph brochure against the Reds, i.e., the socialists. A Red is not a man, he is a Red. He is not a moral being, intelligent and free like you and me. He is fallen and being, degenerate being. Besides, he wears on his face the sign of this degradation, a despondent, besotted physiognomy without expression, dull eyes, mobile and evasive like those of a pig, gross features without harmony, a low forehead, his mouth mute and insignificant like that of an ass.